Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of Marketing Mischief and Mayhem, the show where we talk with top CMOs from great technology companies to understand what's really happening in the trenches of B2B tech marketing. My name is Russell Quinan. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of TheorySF in San Francisco. We're a brand and performance marketing agency for tech firms, and we've been having great conversations with our clients and our friends in the industry, and we thought we'd just open it up so everybody can listen and hopefully maybe take a little nugget of advice away and do something great with that. I'm really happy about today's guest, first because he said yes, and secondly, that he's actually done the impossible. Not once, but repeatedly. He's made payments, shipping, and taxes actually sound exciting. At Shopify, Kevin McGillivray helped turn backend complexity into front-end magic, launching products that powered merchants, baffled analysts, and made checkout feel like a superpower. Whether it was Shopify, Pay, POS Go, or the gloriously unsexy world of international tax compliance, Kevin found a way to make it compelling and sometimes even cool. Now as CMO at Pressable, he's bringing the same storytelling firepower to the world of WordPress hosting, which, let's be honest, is like trying to make DNS records feel like a day at Disneyland, and yet he's doing it. Kevin's a rare combo of product geek and brand whisperer. He can talk CAC and creative in the same sentence and somehow makes both sound like fun. So, please welcome the one-man launch team, the myth, the MacGillivray, Kevin McGillivray. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Russell. Appreciate that intro, and thanks for having me.
You bet. We love having you. And as we always do, Kevin, we're just going to jump right in, okay?
Let's do it.
You helped scale Shopify through one of the wildest growth. I'm going to try that one again. You helped scale Shopify through one of the wildest growth spurts in SaaS history. What did Shopify get right about connecting brand to product velocity?
That's a really good question. And I think one that's really been at the heart of why Shopify has been able to be so successful. Other brands do it, but Shopify is a great use case of it in action. And I think a lot of it really boils down to a few steps in a process that repeat themselves over time. So the first step in this process is always listening to your customers. That transcends brand and product and sales. Like everything within the marketing world starts with listening to your customers. And Shopify did a really good job, or continues to do a really good job doing that. And when you do that kind of first piece really well, that actually translates beautifully into the second piece of this, which is it allows you to build great products. So you listen to what people have to say and what they want, you build it. And then in Shopify's instance, and others, oftentimes that creates a scenario where you are able to grow with your customers. So you listen, you build, you listen, you build, they grow, you grow, and you scale together in a really beautiful way. And the end game here, and this kind of ties back to your brand question, was it allows you to tell some really powerful stories, and they're often ones that your customers will actually tell for you because their experience mirrors what others will ultimately want to experience themselves.
Gotcha. So you're just saying listen to your customers and give them what they want. Is it that easy?
I mean, it's that easy from a starting point. Mm-hmm. If you don't have those two foundational pillars, then you're going to struggle with a lot of the things further down the chain in marketing. Once you start getting to things like execution and campaign planning, those tend to trip a little bit if you haven't actually done your homework and understanding what the pain points and what your customers actually want, or the they're running up against are, because then you'll be selling something that's either irrelevant or just not connecting the way you want it to.
Yeah, we've seen it many times when the process is ready, shoot, aim. And what's that saying? There's never enough money to do it right the first time, but somehow there's enough money to go back and do it over again, right?
Totally.
We see that an awful lot. Sounds like it's not a new story. Okay, so now you're at Pressable, helping brands win on WordPress. What lesson from scaling in-house technology like Shopify, Pay, POS Go, etc., are the most transferable to platform marketing today?
Yeah, that's a really good one, and the answer is actually quite a bit. And I think why that's the case is whether it's like a commerce environment or a hosting environment or any kind of platform or really SaaS product, you're really helping customers and users solve the same kind of big buckets of problems. And it really boils down to three big ones in my view. So one is either help them get more customers themselves or users or whatever their KPI is that they want more of, you're going to help them do that. That's kind of bucket number one. Bucket number two is once they're using the platform or once they're using your service, helping them keep the business that they've already earned. And this is true, by the way, of both Shopify and Pressable and other products like that, where once you get them on, you want them to stay and you want to build that stickiness. And then the third piece is really around, like, as much as you can drastically reduce the complexity and like time to value effort of them using the product, the better. And that way you're helping them in 99% of the cases hit the objectives that they want to. So when you think about what's the same, a lot of those core principles of what people are actually trying to do and accomplish are the same. A couple of other things. These products are examples of ones that work best behind the scenes. So if they're working at their tip-top best, you likely aren't interacting with them as much as you would if your product was bad, because they just work. They just work under the hood. There aren't as many problems bubbling up. And that's kind of a really important similarity. And then the last one, really, other than examples like Shopify that are really going after entrepreneurs, and Pressable does this as well, by the way, like people who are doing things for the first time. Except for those cases, people are often choosing you because they don't like what's happening in their current experience. So, switching mentality is often driven by poor experience, and it doesn't have to be that way. So as a marketer, a lot of what you can latch onto of these kind of like, doesn't have to be like what you're experiencing now. Here's how we kind of solve it and fix it and kind of reduce these pain points for you. A lot of those kind of core principles are actually quite consistent in these two spaces.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. That makes sense to me. You've led product marketing across financial services, shipping, taxes, even POS hardware. What's your playbook for launching complex products that don't exactly scream sexy?
I love the wording of this question. And I think the short answer to this one is, like, it's sexy to somebody for some reason. You just have to find it. So even if it's not like flashy, like the consumer type marketing you see that is like flashy, eye-catching, whatever, sexy to a like developer or sexy to a like under the hood person, operations and sales or whoever you're working with can mean a very different thing. So I think that's like kind of really important nuance to set. Solving a clunky problem that someone's been dealing with for a decade is, that elicits the same kind of, feeling or emotional response. And I think a lot of this starts with, the human angle, like being able to articulate, like, this is Joe who solved this, who's going through the same thing you went through. And like, now he's loving life because he doesn't have to spend 3 hours doing some duct tape solution. Being able to like lead with the human angle, I think is a really powerful way to start. Of course, you have to understand your audience. You have to understand the roles you're talking to. How do you make something seem sexy to a developer or someone in finance who's going to be paying for the product? Mm-hmm. Like, these are all really important, almost product marketing fundamentals. You have to kind of line up so you're building an attractive narrative to the person who's actually listening to that. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that actually also entails creating simplicity from complexity. So something that's very technical, how do you make a finance person be like, oh yeah, hot damn, let's go after this, mm-hmm. or an operation COO or a CEO or whoever you're speaking to, being able to distill what is kind of like in the weeds into what is actually valuable for that person, mm-hmm.
is
also really important. And the last thing I'll say on this one, because I think a lot of the value here is actually what you do up front. Like, product marketing is at the oftentimes at the front end of a lot of these builds, mm-hmm. Is being as real and authentic as you can. Tell real stories, like speak in the language that these people use. Don't speak in platitudes. Don't speak in jargon. Kind of meet them where they are. And oftentimes that's how you get that kind of like eyes lighting up. I get it.
Right. Hey, so let me ask you, in our experience, we've seen, especially in technology marketing, we tend to break down into two audiences. right? We have the specifier, who's the person that's going to be using the technology, and they're like frontline people. They're the developer, right? They're deep in it. They have a different set of concerns than the second audience, which is the approvers, right? Who are going to sign the checks. Are you kind of covering communications to both groups, or do you rely on just going straight to the folks who are the specifiers, or do you find that you're doing marketing to both groups?
I think in many cases, you're actually doing marketing to both groups, and it's sort of context dependent on what's gonna work the best. A lot of time, like, you have to figure out who your advocates are going to be in a particular organization. Is it the CTO developer type who is going to convince the leadership and CFO model that they should spend money on something because it's really important to them? Or are you pitching to the CFO around how this is actually going to save you money or make you money, and then they actually have to be the advocate into the technology part of the organization to get them to prioritize work? And a lot of that, especially when you think about how marketing plugs into sales or a commercial organization, you could start sussing that out early in deal cycles so you can pivot that conversation to be what it needs to be, depending on who the advocate or decision maker is in the particular organization. So the short answer is both, situation dependent.
Okay. So revenue marketing, product marketing, brand marketing, how do you make them all dance in sync instead of stepping on each other's toes?
The age-old question. I think this is one that is arguably simpler in a early stage organization. It's smaller because everyone's wearing 14 hats, but by the time you get to an organization that's scaled, you are going to run into instances where 20 to 30% of your role kind of like slips into, another marketing subcraft. And it's not just a marketing problem. This is something that happens across the board. But from my historical experience, one of the things that helps solve this upfront or mitigate it a little bit is aligning across all of these stakeholders, like what is the North Star KPI that everything we do across this entire marketing team needs to roll up to. So often it's things like revenue or subscriber growth, whatever that is in that particular instance, making sure that there's a shared understanding of that across the board. Now, the second piece here is the one where it gets interesting, where you then go into these sub-marketing crafts. So whether it's revenue marketing, product marketing, demand gen, brand, content, all of these pieces that play in, it's important to have that alignment up front as well. What is the sub-KPI that is the North Star for each of those groups? And being clear about that often drives clarity in a roadmap, because everything you're doing is going to be working to influence that secondary KPI, and then you avoid some of this overlap because you know what you are responsible for, and you should be empowered to go to town to achieve that. And then that also builds trust, right? Because like when you have everything out in the open, clarity around goals and objectives, you don't run into as many of those problems, and you can kind of build trust with your peers, and it's easier to kind of help everybody get to the same good place. Feedback loops, though, are really important. Like they're never seamless. So having a good working relationship with your peer group is also really important.
So you're saying swim lanes help? Everybody gets a swim lane KPI.
I would say the last framing you had, swim lane KPI, that helps. It'll never be true 100% of the time, because there's going to be work that is just by design overlap between two groups or more. You just have to plan to work through those. But the swim lane by design, at least from a North Star standpoint, is really helpful. Like, what are you doing, and what are you trying to impact, and making sure that what you're doing always rolls up to that. That's a good clarity driver.
Okay. So you've worked on both sides of the checkout aisle, e-com and in real life retail. How are expectations changing for how and where brands show up?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of it is changing with technology and changing in the macro environment. It's not, I don't want to say marketers are reactive, but there is a lot of things that marketers need to be aware of. And the e-com IRL example you shared is like, it's a very commerce example, but it's certainly true of other things as well. At the core of what a lot of these things are, though, is the idea of authenticity. So in a world where everything online in some way, shape, or form is like shifting in the risk to like, is it authentic? Like, is this AI generated? Is this real? Like, and it's only going to become a bigger thing that people have on the top of their mind. How do you drive that authenticity, whether it is online or in person? And I think in person is going to play, a really important role going forward, whether it's events, sales meetings in person, real live conversations, what's the word I'm looking for? Like groups of folks solving similar problems that get together. Those are going to become really, really pillars. And one of the interesting problems marketing has to solve, which we certainly haven't done yet, is how to drive that authenticity in a digital world. Because it's going to be tricky.
Yeah.
One thing that, from my POV, that likely is a good step in that direction is continuing down the path of personalization. So being able to speak directly to a, sub segment, like you're as close to your actual prospect or the person you're marketing to as possible. So that message is as relevant as possible, rather than just some, generic, like, here's how you solve problem A, which applies to everybody and nobody. The closer you can get to a relevant message, that is also kind of an authenticity relevance driver, right. Which I think is important too.
Yep, for sure. Makes sense. So if you had to reverse engineer growth from one single marketing metric, just one, what would it be and why?
This is an interesting question. And I think it's one where there's multiple right answers, but I'll give you the one that I think is important. And it really boils down to conversion rate. And like the extension of that is sort of revenue per converted lead, like that kind of space. And the reason for this is, as a marketer, conversion rate really captures the most things. So it captures the efficacy of messaging, creative, how good your targeting is, how good your product design is, your marketing design, all of these things kind of linchpin at conversion rate. It balances volume and quality. It's important for marketing because you don't want to just be garbage in, garbage out. You got to make sure the leads and volume you're bringing in are actually going to land on the platform. And the revenue extension there is like, are the best, most lucrative leads converting and landing on your platform and driving revenue for the business. So that's, I think, what I would choose. It is also directly tied to revenue. Revenue is just the next extension. And I think your language around reverse engineering, if you look at some of, like, I'll just use the 5 W's or whatever it's called, but like who you're talking to, what you're saying, where you're saying it, when you're saying it, and why you're saying it, all of those kind of like marketing questions can be boiled down into conversion. Like what you're doing, where you're doing, and how you're doing, all of these things, how good you're doing that will show its face in conversion.
Okay. I buy it. You've managed everything from giant launches to analyst relations. What's one marketing hill you died on that turned out to be totally worth it?
Yeah, this is a good question, and there's actually a few examples of this in my career, but they all kind of boil down to the same kind of thing happening, where it's all about the balance between getting things out the door quickly and making sure that you have a cohesive story to tell in market from a marketing standpoint. And the principle here really is, like, from a marketing standpoint, in many cases, you want to keep your powder dry and go big in a smaller number of more impactful moments. It doesn't mean that you can't continue to ship product and get it in the hands of your customers early, which you absolutely should do. And marketing can play a big role there. But when you're thinking about creating these big, like, splashy marketing moments, examples from my past are when there's, 5 or 6 products that are reaching maturity, and then suddenly you have a good story to tell about them together in a category rather than a feature. These are really interesting moments to, like, make a big thing about. And my learnings and sort of, hill to die on per se is, like, make sure you're ready to go do that, because oftentimes you only get one kick at that can to create a compelling story and build trust in that space. rather than like, oh, we're kind of like 30% there, let's do it, and we'll do it again at 60 and again at 90. So many times I've had conversations around like, let's preserve this moment to do something really cool, gather as much feedback and intelligence from people using these pieces and the product, as it ships, and then have a really, really compelling story to tell. Oftentimes that also allows you to talk to users directly and gather their feedback and experiences that you can leverage in marketing as well. So that's an interesting moment that's actually bubbled up many times in my history.
I like it. Thank you for that. Okay, so what's your advice for PMMs or rev marketers looking to step into the CMO role without turning into full-time spreadsheet jockeys?
This is one that I have lived and continue to live, and it's an ongoing thing. I think a lot of marketing leaders deal with and will continue to deal with, because it's not something that just turns off once you figure it out. It's an ongoing thing to work on. But I think there's a few things that help. Number one is surrounding yourself with really strong people. I'm a huge fan of hiring to complement your own skill set and background. So if there's an area that I'm weaker at as a leader, or my leadership team is weaker at, how do I hire to complement that? Even if that means that I'm the third most smartest person in the room on that topic, that's the right thing to do to kind of build that in, and it allows for easier delegation in the future to preserve your time. I think another big area is data and storytelling. So you need to put yourself, or work to put yourself in a position where you are being fed or have really good access to high quality data that you can draw narratives and stories from, rather than doing the crunching yourself. Like you mentioned, spreadsheets. You can have high trust people or high trust tools that are doing a lot of that for you. You should be spending more of your time on building leverage from that in and outside of the organization. So getting good inputs is really, really important. And I think as a CMO and cross-functional marketing leaders out there, in a world where AI, in often really good ways, is playing a larger role, one of the biggest areas that's still a huge leverage builder is cross-functional, cross-org, cross-business unit, cross-craft collaboration, alignment building, strategic brainstorming, getting the right leadership together to make important decisions quickly, unblock. That's something that's it's not solved by tooling today. So as a strong cross-functional marketing leader, that's an area that remains really, really important, and often unlocks some of the tedious stuff down the road if you do it really well. And obviously things like prioritization are really, really important, especially if you have limited resourcing. What tooling can you implement? AI is providing a plethora of marketing tools. Some are good, some aren't good. A lot of experimentation in that space. But being able to what is the most important work in any given period, and making sure that that's prioritized is still king.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You've marketed through the rise of AI, the fall of cookies, the explosion of B2B influencers. What's your best advice for staying ahead of whatever's next without burning out?
Yeah, this is another juicy one, especially it feels like it's accelerated in the last 6, 12, 18 months. And I think it's going to continue to get harder given the pace at which change is happening. But I think the first thing is really finding a way to stay aware of what is happening. And your question around how to not let you, I think picking your sources. So spend the time to find a few trusted sources, and whether it's thought leaders that are doing really good work in the marketing space, whether it's publications or whatever. Find your small handful of sources and lean on those, rather than getting 100 million perspectives from everybody that you don't really know whether that's vetted or you don't really know where that's coming from or that context is coming from. So I think that's a really, really important piece. Going back to prioritization, you have to be strategic. You cannot do everything. You cannot test everything. You cannot absorb everything. So picking the things that you believe are going to be high impact, and figuring out, an experimentation plan, and pick one thing, two things every cycle to try out, that you kind of think are going to be impactful, and go after those. Try and get implementation success and drive outcomes from them, which will give fuel to being able to do more of that work. I think one of the things we're seeing though, with a lot of the implementation of new tooling and the rise of AI, is the failure point is at implementation. Like the idea that these things deliver value is probably true, but people struggle to actually implement them in their organization to drive value.
Yeah.
So being thoughtful about what you're doing and seeing things through, and making sure you're giving each thing the appropriate level of attention is more valuable than like AI and 50 things, like go play around and you likely won't succeed or won't get anything.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a wonderful answer. All right, my favorite.
Russell, the last thing I'll say on that one, because it's important to me, is like, be patient with yourself as you're doing it, because it's new. A lot of this stuff is new for everybody. It's moving so quickly. We're all learning. Everybody is going through a massive learning phase, and having that like group empathy and understanding for yourself that like just one step at a time, keep learning, keep plugging away, normalizing feeling the like overwhelmed feeling also helps, because we're all going through it.
That's great advice, especially in today's era. Great advice, Kevin. Okay, one of my favorite questions is always around the brand. Shopify had a very clear voice and tone. How do you evolve a brand's voice without alienating the audience that made it successful in the first place?
Yes, a tricky one. I think the core answer to this one is actually in the word evolve, which you used in the question, where to do this successfully, I don't think it can ever be a full 180. You cannot be like, suddenly we're, a brand that appeals over here, and then tomorrow, like, nope, we're changing it completely and we're going over here. I've never seen that work ever. So the word evolution is really, really important. And that means not losing some of the core fundamentals that made a brand what it was in the first place. And it doesn't mean those can't change and evolve. But if you think of what a lot of brands lean into, things like, driving confidence and empathy and clarity, like a lot of those kind of core principles, you can't lose in the process. Otherwise, you've broken trust. You are no longer clear. People don't know what you stand for. You don't understand your users anymore. That's kind of the trap that you get into if you don't kind of keep these kind of core tenets. I also believe and have seen a layering strategy can often be very successful. So voice and tone layering, where you lean into the same 30%, but the expression of that is different depending on what you're talking about and where you're talking about it. And I think on a lot of tech companies, Shopify for sure, but also Automatic and many companies out there, you often also have different surfaces that you're talking to different people on. So like someone Googling how to do XYZ may land on a particular surface, and you kind of know that the people who are doing that need a certain message. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're talking to enterprise or high mid-market or large accounts, their first touch point is completely different. It's an event. It's, you lean into what you have in sales decks and enablement and bill of materials. So you often have some flexibility to express in a different place, where you're not muddying a message because people are looking for their information and guidance in different places. And you get to experiment too. Like it's not something that's easy to do as like a Band-Aid rip. You kind of have to it's a slow evolution often produces good results. The example I like to think of here too is like a MacBook or a MacBook Pro or some of these like high-end Apple products. The range of users that can use these products is massive.
Yeah.
And just because the processing speed and graphics and like all these things that a developer or designer or someone who's maxing out this technology, they get what they need from how the product speaks to them. But the, person who's just entering computing or just using their first laptop, they can get just as much utility out of that product. It's sort of like building a model where you can say the thing and it trickles down and doesn't lose any of its efficacy. There's good examples like that out there.
Yeah, for sure. That was a great answer. All right, Kevin, this is the most exciting part of everybody's day. It's the lightning round, the famous lightning round, where we just go for the first thing that comes to your mind. And I'm going to shoot. Are you ready?
Ready. Let's do it.
Terrific. Let's do it. What's more stressful, launching a new product or helping your parents set up their online shopping cart?
I would say definitely launching a new product, not because it's hard, but because my parents have yet to really get into online shopping. So the problem has yet to be here.
Okay.
Force.
Okay. Marketing trope you'd love to ban forever. Omnichannel, frictionless, or digital transformation?
I'm going to have to go with omnichannel, only because I'm a huge fan of saying what you mean, and you can be about 10 layers more specific than omnichannel.
Okay.
Oftentimes, the problem you're solving.
These questions. What's the weirdest Slack emoji reaction you've ever gotten after posting a campaign update?
So one of the best ones I ever got was, I think it was called Blob Juice, which is like a blob drinking a juice box.
What the hell is that?
What it meant was just like juicy, like this was a juicy update. But I'm actually I've become a fan, so I now use it all the time.
Okay.
About things that I see that are like really intelligent or really good, creative, juicy marketing.
Okay, I like it. At least it wasn't eggplant. All right. What's your marketing love language? Killer copy, beautiful decks, or clean attribution?
For this one, I'm going to have to go with clean attribution, only because it's a rare love.
Yeah, it's a unicorn.
It's a unicorn. You can often find good copy and good decks, but that rare attribution is hard to find.
Okay, fair enough. More terrifying, shipping POS hardware during holiday season or explaining what you do at a family reunion?
I will say POS hardware during holiday season because the stakes are so high. If Uncle Joe doesn't understand the job,
fair enough.
Not the end of the world. We'll just move on to dessert.
Fair enough. So, which brand marketing team would you happily join for free just to be in the room?
I'm gonna have to go with one of these big AI companies. Whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these ones out there, only because they are solving problems that play on so many different emotions for so many different people, and how do you kind of manage that and still get a clear message across? Mm-hmm. I think that would be fascinating. Yeah,
that's multi-dimensional chess happening right now. Favorite marketing tool or software that deserves a gold medal or at least a decent espresso machine? Favorite marketing tool or software?
I gotta go with a basic answer on this one with HubSpot, only because it's a workhorse for me, and it's at the core of a lot of what I do. A lot of them out there, but that's kind of the cranker. Okay. If your brand voice had a celebrity spokesperson, who would it be? And who would you pick if legal wasn't an issue? I'm going to go with, assuming that I can be as creative here as I want, I'm going to go with a non-real person. You go with an AI avatar? Like an AI avatar? I was going to go with Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars. Trusted, calm under pressure, mentorship, all these kind of values that I think a lot of the under the hood tech folks out there, want to be associated with. A friend in need, a friend when you're in need. Yeah. It's interesting. For one of our B2B SaaS brands that we designed and launched, we had a brand persona that we said was a Zen master with a PhD in finance. And that turned into just us remembering it as if Yoda was really smart about finance. Like, what would Yoda say about this? And wisdom. Yeah, exactly. He became our guiding light for the tone of voice. Okay, last question. You're rebranding marketing itself. What's the new name and what's the tagline? If I was rebranding marketing, I would rebrand it. I'm going to make up a word here and say Storycraft. Only because storytelling is so incredibly important, and particularly in this day and age, to everything we do with marketing. And I'm going to say the tagline is like marketing with heart rather than hype. Like tell things from the heart that connect with people at the base layer, because those are the things that are going to leave a lasting impact.
Storycrafting, the new name for marketing. You heard it here first from Kevin McGillivray. Kevin, thank you so much for spending some time with us and shooting through these questions. Loved your answers. I'm sure our listeners will as well. And I want to thank you for taking a flyer and coming and talking with us.
Awesome. Russell, really appreciate it. This was great questions. And thanks for making this a fun 30 minutes.
You bet.
Cheers.